Welcome back to everyone to another edition of The Whole Perspective. My name is Kevin Delory, Chief Lending Officer with EPM. As always, joined by my good man, Kenny Phillips, Senior Vice President of TPO Lending. Today, we got a special guest. It's funny, I'm reading a lot of my notes, Will. I know Will is big on note taking, and I've been taking notes, and Charles Clark said the same thing. And I go back to just about everybody that's on it said about taking notes. But we're gonna after Kenny does the introduction, we got a lot of great questions. I'm super excited, and this is great coming off the piggyback of our storytelling event and leadership event. This is perfect timing.
Let's get going. He's a former major event sports administrator, having been recognized by the White House Department of Communications for outstanding service to the President of the United States during his time at the College Football Playoff. Will formerly served as an athletic performance coach at Baylor, SMU, and TCU, leading to multiple conference championships, and most importantly, student athletes graduating with valuable degrees. In 2019, he founded the Texas Regional Sports Summit to support young professionals with affordable professional development opportunities. Welcome, Will.
Hey, what's going on, Kenny and Kevin, man? Thank you so much for the opportunity to be on. And, it's easy to say you guys' names. So Kenny and Kevin, I can say that all day. So really appreciate the alliteration there. But so excited. Thank you for the warm introduction.
Yeah, no, I'm excited too. It's Kenny, you could have used an athletic performance coach at the University of Miami, maybe in a different place today. But, I didn't have this written down, and I'm a big note taker. And we just came off an event, Will, and it has a lot to do with speaking. It was about telling your life story, right? And one of the things I said is, tell your story to as many people as you can. And the beauty of your story is that you can't edit it, right? Whatever happened in the past is in the past, but you can write your next chapter and become who you want to be, right? As an athletic performance coach, you're probably dealing with a lot of these kids that didn't have the easiest life growing up. Maybe now they have ego because everyone told them how great they were. Of, you're the best in the business, you're this, you're that, you're going to be in this. How do you deal with that ego of these young kids? And here you are trying to get them to concentrate on the one thing they're great at that you see, but everyone's telling them how great they are. Maybe it went to their head.
Yeah, man, that's a great question. And, you have it nailed down perfectly. One thing that kind of the Achilles heel of a lot of athletes is by the time they get to age 22 or whatever it is and get ready to graduate college, or 21, they've spent time developing one skill since they were 6 years old. And what happens when that skill is no longer useful to them, whether it's due to injury or they didn't get drafted, didn't make it past training camp. And it's such a tough business. I mean, when they say, I have a lot of friends in the pros, when they say it's not for long league, NFL, it is literally not for long. 3.5 years is the usual, stint that most players get. And I'll say this real quick and I'll get more into the question, but I have some friends with the professional sports team. I won't say the team's name, but they made me think about something I never thought about. They said that a starting cornerback getting hurt can affect a third string tight end. Just because, hey, we want that cornerback, we'll cut that third string tight end and move the roster around. And then your career, you're just out of the league just by nature of something you could not even control. So it's just that cutthroat. But as you kind of mentioned and cited, when they're in that thick of it, when they're in the athletics kind of sphere of influence, they're focused on one thing for the most part. And then, like you said, a lot of them have tough backgrounds. And this is the first time they've been in a structured environment. So how do you create structure around that to where when they get out of that environment, they don't, regress to the mean or to the average rather. So I'll give you an example. I was at the University of Texas recently speaking, and I really just had them hone in on how important it is that they start now with networking, reaching out to people, because you have this built-in kind of fan base just because you have this jersey on of people that are very well off in their careers, very well off in their businesses. And this is the time that you can get the most help, assistance, guidance, mentorship, and career opportunities. And so as one gentleman had a very tough background growing up in Louisiana. And all I told him to do, I said, guys, if you can do one thing for me, create a LinkedIn profile. Please just do that for me. Just create a LinkedIn profile and I'll take it from there. So he does it. He texted me the link and said, hey, I just did it. And I said, okay, bet. I appreciate you following up. And I got your back. So I shouted him out on my LinkedIn. And within 48 hours, he had 100 new connections. He had an internship opportunity and was interviewed on a podcast just by doing what he was supposed to do. So that was a breath of fresh air for me. That's obviously not the norm always, but when you reach one, at least they begin to become a ambassador for you among their peers. They'll trust his word even more so than they trust mine. And they trust my word even more so than the administrators on campus every single day. It's that parent versus peer kind of thing. So I think it's a matter of understanding what the in-house administration, what their messaging is, what are they preaching, and how can you dovetail from that, but also come in from a different perspective and give them very easy bite-sized goals. And I think the one thing coaching taught me was how to communicate at a high level in concise fashion that they can understand and they can execute on.
Nice.
That's awesome. You know, it's funny. Business is so much like athletics, right? So when I think of being a young guy, I come from a tough background. All of a sudden, I'm making $1 million a year. I come from a single family parent home. You know, my brother's always in trouble, and here I am. All of a sudden, where's all this money come from? I am like the best of the best. I'm like A-Rod of the mortgage industry, right? I'm crushing it. But it took the right person for me to do just what you just said. And I think in business, we need to, as business leaders, we need to recognize that you're not always going to get through with the first try. And to your point, take small bite sizes and give it to them. Because every time someone came to me and said, you're the real leader of this company and you should be the leader. And I said, no, I can still hit 40 home runs and still 40 bases. My head just got bigger and bigger. And it wasn't until the right person at the right time came to me and said, slow down. I want you to think how much bigger you can be and how much longer your career could be. Because like a premier cornerback or anyone, you one injury, you're out of the game. And this guy's like, you could do so much more. Like, it's great that you're making all this money, but how many more people can you touch? Can you help? So in business, I think leaders need to take that approach with some of these young guys. And we have some young guys that we've taken into our industries getting older and older. We've taken these young guys in. And Kenny and I have had to adjust the way we speak to them, the way we talk to them. To your point, we got to have these little conversations because you have too much in there. Have the 2 minutes, like look at the ceiling and, so, I mean, Kenny, am I wrong? I think that is definitely a difference of find that way to connect with somebody. And it isn't always going to be in the obvious, right? When that person came to me, at that point in my career would have been the obvious would have been, hey, how do you could make more money, you could do this, and and feed into my ego. They didn't. They said you're not always going to be this good. You're going to get married someday. You're going to have a child. You're not going to be able to be in the office 80 hours a week. And it allowed me to open my mind and think bigger. So like that conversation with that young man where you say, look, do this, take these baby steps, and now they get to see it. I think that's the key. I think people try to give the big picture and push them, and they end up failing. It's a long journey sometimes. Sometimes it's 3 steps. Sometimes it's 20 steps. So
Absolutely.
I love that.
Obviously, Kevin, you said we come from, humble beginnings, and it was kind of more trial and error. So we have the benefit of sharing experiences now with these guys and letting them know, how to act and how to, have that money and have success. And now in your case, Will, the fame that comes along with going to the NFL, things of that nature. And you mentioned something earlier about LinkedIn and getting that kid to LinkedIn and really giving him 100,000 or 45,000 people following him. You came up with an acronym called LIFT, right? How important for these kids now with NIL money? And you said, LIFT can bring you up or down. Talk about LIFT first of all, the acronym, and how important that is for these kids now in college.
Wow, you've been doing research, man. How did you find that? But the acronym LIFT, to your point, is just kind of an acronym for the different social media platforms. So LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and Snapchat. And understanding that, some kids think Facebook is for a different generation or what have you. Still always try to tell them that you're going to meet different people in different spaces. You have to go where your audience is. So you have to speak the language that they're speaking, just like you guys mentioned. And, the future of work is not a future thing anymore. It's the now of work. It's here. And we are actually living in it as we speak. And so what I try to do is I try to make sure people are able to understand different communication channels. So for instance, like if you're posting on Instagram, you're not going to be dropping links and stuff in that in the captions. It's just not built for that, right? You're not going to be taking something from Instagram and trying to post it to Twitter through Instagram. The systems don't talk to each other. Facebook and Instagram are owned by the same company, Meta. So it's just a matter of understanding the different platforms and different voices and what the algorithms, what they favor, what they're looking for. And there's some things that, he would ask me, he said, hey, should I post this on LinkedIn? I said, no, it's more for Instagram or more for Twitter. You got to understand the audience, understand the rules of engagement. And I think that's a lot of misses that happen in today's society is not understanding the rules of engagement for that setting, for that platform, for that audience. And because a lot of the lines have become blurred. But, if you think about accounting, there's generally accepted accounting principles. I think there are generally accepted professional conduct standards that are not going to change. They're going to adapt. They're going to evolve. right? When I was coming up, if your ankles were showing, you were flooding, but now it's style. You know what I mean? So, you know what I mean? When I was coming up, if your shoes were big, we would get on you pretty good. But now it's just style, right? So things evolve, things adapt, and you change with the times, and you meet them where they are. And I put out something recently that said you can't meet people where they are, you need to leave them where they are. And that goes for both parties. So that's a great call out.
The good news is that I just had my tailor here yesterday, and she took all my pants in and lifted them up so my ankles could show. So I didn't. I'm able to recycle my look. So that was good.
Sir. I love it.
I read a post that you posted, and this was a great one. And there was more to it. And it was about taking notes, but it was about, elite people want to be coached. Average people get offended. And I think a lot of people are afraid to coach the elite people, and they don't know what they're missing out on. And yesterday I had a conversation with our CEO, and iron sharpens iron. Sometimes it's okay, to approach that person like, hey, I think we could do it this way, and give them the coaching opportunity and do it, but and vice versa. And I think anyone that gets offended by that, to your point, yeah, they're average. They're never getting to the next level. So how do you do that? How do you deal with it? And again, with young guys that have these egos, even in business, you can meet these CEOs that, their companies just increase 100% year over year. How do you get through to them that it's so important to be coached?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is, exactly what you said. The elite people want to be coached. A friend of mine, he worked in the NFL for a while, and he talked about how Calvin Johnson was the first guy in, last guy out when he was with the Lions. I mean, he had 3 receiver coaches. He had, nutrition coaches. Like, he wanted to get better. Peyton Manning wanted to get better. And so there's an innate want to of the elite that want to get better. There's another subset of people that are elite by talent, but may not be elite by mindset, or may not be elite by perspective, right? So they can still go out there and turn it on, but their other parts of their life could be in shambles. Like, I always talk about things transfer, and we always coach our athletes. The person you are determines the athlete you're going to be. And you mentioned something about, bringing stuff to people that could be perceived as elite. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. My business partner, Darren K. Roberts, elite. He's one of the elite speakers in the world. And one thing I brought to him was, hey, I noticed you don't do much video. I have a background in production, cinematography, film, stuff like that. I don't shoot, but I do production and scripting. I said, let me put a camera in your face and see what happens. And it's been a game changer. So when it comes to whether it's like it's a subordinate or someone that's over you, or if it's like a mentor-mentee relationship, the biggest thing now for this future of work, or this now work that we have, is the fact that this younger generation is so tech savvy, and there's so many ways they can advance the business. I read a stat the other day that says 65% of businesses, 65% so the kids that are being born now, in 20 years, 65% of the jobs they'll be working don't exist today. They don't even exist today. And so that's how fast things are evolving. And so I think it's one of those things, when you get to a person, you show you care about them first, becoming known, becoming trusted, liked, and valued, really leading with that, hey, I care about you. And one thing people say about when I get off stage, it says, and I can tell you really care. When I get off stage, every kid gets my personal cell phone number, right? It's not a phone tree. Pardon me, it's directly to my cell phone, because I've been through some of these things these kids have been through. I wasn't an elite athlete, but I've seen some different sides of life. And honestly, I've seen some kids that I've coached go to the NFL, go to the pros. I've seen some go to the prison cell. And so I've seen both sides of it. And I'm like, okay, how can we triage that? How can we make sure that this doesn't happen? So I would say that it's just showing them, because this new generation, they want to see that you care. There's an old adage that says no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. It's even more important now, because they are looking at jobs, and if they're not aligned with the mission statement, if they don't like what you're doing corporate social responsibility, there are kids that are getting jobs, signing offer letters, getting their computers and laptops, what have you, and not showing up on the first day. It's calling it professional ghosting. Right. Like, that's where we are now. So I would say, to answer your question, it's all about care, and really just showing them that you are dialed in with them, you understand what's important to them. And that's why to this day, I still volunteer coach at these universities nearby here in Dallas, because that's how I can stay on the cutting edge of what's important to them, what they're listening to, what they're consuming, and I can meet them where they are, as we mentioned.
I love that you said relate. I think sometimes in business, in life, we look at where we are, and I talk about our story. We look at the chapter of our life where we are now, and we forget where we came from. We forget the the chapters 1, 2, and 3, all these things growing up, and you can relate to those things. So people see me now, they sometimes say, oh, that guy lives in a nice neighborhood, he drives a nice car. They don't know what I've been through. They don't know my struggle. So I can relate to a lot of them when I have these conversations. It's amazing. So I would say to any leader or anyone that's coaching someone, be relatable. That was a great comment. And I think I even forget that sometimes because it took a long time. I'll be 52 this year. It took 51 years for me to realize that I shouldn't be ashamed of my story. There's power in that story. There's power in relating to people to bring them up and to lift them up and to lead them. So I think anyone, that was great you said that, because I think a lot of us forget that we all can relate to each other, no matter, age, race, sex. It doesn't matter. We've all have a shared experience somewhere along the lines. It's about having the conversation to find out what it is and to lead them up. And I think you even said it, lead with the intent to develop your successor. Don't be afraid of the person behind you. Share your story to empower them to say, if I can do it, I know you can do it. I know you can do it. I know all of you. I personally, if I don't see that someone has the desire and will to get to the next level, I don't want to coach them. It's a waste of my time. I want the guy that's chasing me because he keeps me young. That's why I don't look 51. Kenny's keeping me looking 51, 35, so the chase is real. It feels good to hear those footsteps. It keeps you on the game.
Yeah, man, you said something, man, that really, struck me right there. And I want to elaborate a little bit on it real quick. The people that are being vulnerable, to your point, Kevin, they are the ones that are creating separation right now. Reason being is because you log on to most social media platforms, there's so much information and there's so much faking, and as the young folks would say, cap these days, people not telling the truth about their lifestyles. And when people are coming on and say, hey, I made a mistake. Hey, I didn't do the right thing. Hey, this is what I've learned from my failures. Those people tend to see much higher engagement because, to your point, Kevin, they're more relatable, they're more vulnerable. And yeah, I'm the same way. Like, I want to be challenged. I was telling my business partner yesterday, I'm not driven just by success or money. I'm driven by a competitive edge. Like, if I see something in the marketplace, I'm like, yep, I can do better than that. And I just get to work. That's how I'm driven. And some people get up in the morning and have time blocks and schedules. That doesn't work for me. And so I think in learning that about myself, that has helped me kind of understand what my tackling fuel is. And it's that part of it and developing other people. And last thing I'll say to that end, I read an article one time that talks about Nick Saban, and the headline said, Nick Saban isn't into college football. I'm like, what is this, clickbait? So what I do, I clicked. So I took the bait. So I clicked, took the bait, and I started reading it, but it made a compelling argument. So Nick Saban plays, when he's on campus every day, he plays in a thing called the NBA on Alabama's campus, the Noontime Basketball Association, right? And in reading that and how competitive he is in every aspect of his life, they said that Nick Saban isn't in the football necessarily. Nick Saban's in the competition. He could be shooting marbles, you know what I mean? He could be playing tic-tac-toe. He wants to win. And so when I dialed that back and looked at, kind of my own life, I said, you know what? I'm not really into speaking. I'm not really into writing, so to speak, or I'm not really into social media. I'm into human development. If that's coaching, if that's speaking, if that's whatever that looks like, whatever that branch is, the nucleus has to come back to human development. That's that core value that I have. And that has helped me tremendously in my life to stay focused and keep my passion and purpose in front view.
I'm glad you jumped, Kenny. Does this sound familiar? I'm glad he jumped on the mistake the mistake piece, because this morning I got so angry and I said, why can't they just admit they made a mistake? They can learn so much from their mistake and get ahead. You're wasting so much time and energy to escape that mistake or rewrite your story. And instead of just owning it and getting better, right? If when I make a mistake, I'm the first one to say, I screwed up. I take ownership that anything happens under my watch. We don't hit the number. It's not my sales guys. It's me. I was at the helm of the ship. Kenny was right alongside me. It's the two of us. We own this. So I love that you said that. I'm glad that anyone listening, and it just hit a nerve with me this morning because I get so angry. Like, I don't know why more people just can't say I screwed up. I made a mistake.
You screwed up.
Right. What did Ryan Serhant say? He said, I said, I think I'm more afraid of failure. He questioned me and he said, are you afraid of failure or are you more ashamed of not winning? And I'm like, something is the shame. I don't hold that anymore because I make mistakes. I am who I am. And when you free your story up and you let go of everything, right, Ken? I mean, that was the conversation this morning about mistakes. I'm so glad you picked that up because I hope the person that made the mistakes listening, I've been vindicated. Okay.
Nah, Will, you said something, and I think it's something that Kevin holds dear to his heart, and we talk about it on Zoom calls, things like that. And I know you coach these kids about branding and image. You said it's important to recognize in-clothed cognition.
Yes,
I'll
absolutely.
think about that, and I think Kevin's going to be excited.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, Kevin, as we say back home in Mississippi, you look like new money. Blue stripe hunters, not the small faces. So, man, to talk about clothes cognition, man, it really just speaks to what you dress, or how you dress, what you wear, and it affects how you feel. Everything from your physical appearance, from how much you work out, spend time in the gym, whether it's your sleep patterns. There's so much that comes just by taking care of yourself physically, mentally, and doing the right things to take care of yourself. But there's another step, like you mentioned, Kenny. And clothes cognition basically says what you wear is basically how you feel. And Deion Sanders says that, if you look good, you play good, they pay good. You know what I mean? So it's kind of that same exact concept. And so when the pandemic hit in 2020 and 2021, I was still presenting in my home. But one thing I did is every single presentation, I put it on my countertop, stacked it up with shoe boxes, and I stood up for every single presentation. And I was dressed from head to toe in every single presentation. And one kid, like, let me see what you got on. I showed him. I was all the way to the floor, right? I had all my stuff on. And the reason was because it wasn't for you. It was for me. Like, I feel better when I have, the proper clothes on that match what I'm trying to get across. Dressing for the job you want or the opportunity you want, not the one you have. And there's this quote that talks about how you do anything is how you do everything. And so I live by that in my personal life, in my professional life, because these things transfer. And it just makes a whole world of difference because I said, if I was presenting in front of you, and the pandemic wasn't going on, I'd be standing up. If I was in front of you, I would be dressed, to the nines, head to toe. So we're going to do the same thing here because I'm not going to shortchange you just because I'm in my own home. And so I think, when you set those personal standards for yourself that can't be lowered or affected by outside influences, you get to a different level. I mean, there's so many people that are driven by other people's opinions and, what's going on with the weather and what's going on with the economy, what have you. And we just talked about standards as a coaches. We just talked about what is your personal standard for you that you do not dip below no matter what happens. And last thing I'll say, I love quotes, as you probably can tell. The Navy SEALs quote that says, under pressure, we don't rise to the occasion. We sink to our level of training. And that's why we train so hard.
That's awesome. I do love that one, Kenny. And it's funny because December of this year, if anyone that listens to this show knows I hate New Year's resolutions. I think that for the week, you shouldn't need a day of the year to make a resolution. December, right before my birthday, I was sitting around and I said, man, I could be in better shape than I was when I was 25. Just turned 51. I said, I'm going to do it. And I've worked out every single week, maybe probably missed 12 days since December 16th. And I feel better because I said, I feel I'm the best point in my career because I am reading more than I've ever read. And do I read to learn? I think I read more to spark thought in my own brain because a lot of it is, hey, I know this, I get this, but it reminds me of something. It sparks more deep thought, more conversation, more deep questions. But to your point, like, I wanted to feel good in every aspect of my life. I wanted to show up the best. I have a 6-year-old daughter. I need to be the best for her every day, of my life when I get out of bed. That means getting up at 5 o'clock, working out, putting some time in the treadmill, eating a little better, still like a few Tito's on the weekend and maybe a cheeseburger here and there. But to your point, I feel so much more accomplished by 8 o'clock in the morning than most people feel at 5 o'clock in the day. I come in this office at 7:30. I get more accomplished between 7:30 and 9 than most people do in the course of a day. So when I show up, I show up, and it's last week, Charles Clark said something great. I said, I don't get out of bed and come to the work unless I'm 100%. He's like, well, that can't really be true. I mean, no one's 100% every day. And I said, good point. I show up and give, if it's only 70%, 100% of that 70%, and just show up and just charge every day. And Kenny will tell you, there's been one day in the last 2 years, I get up and left the office at like 2. It wasn't to go play golf. I wasn't doing anything. I said, I'm more of a detriment today than I am an asset. I'm going to leave. I'm in a bad mood. I'm not I'm only going to bring the team down. I'm going to go home. Tomorrow I'll come back and I'll be back to myself. And those are the things I think people sometimes don't realize. Brand, reputation, you could do more damage by staying in the moment than separating yourself from the moment, digging some deep thought, figuring it out, start hitting the reset button the next morning, getting up, working out, doing the whole routine over, coming in and saying, here I am. And people have more respect for me than the guy that would just sit there and slug through the day and give a half-ass, effort. So I love that you do that, man. Like I dress up. I do it for the glory of Delory, as you can see. I mean,
Yes, sir.
I show up every day, right, Kenny?
Absolutely. Did I lose you, Will?
Yeah,
No,
I'm still here.
Kenny, you got must have problems over there.
No, I didn't hear him. I'm sorry. So we're big on culture here. One of the reasons Kevin and I came to EPM was really about the culture of the organization. How important that is to you, first of all. How important is culture to you when you talk to these kids, and how important is it in sports?
Absolutely. Culture, I always say that you have a culture by design or by default, but you have a culture. You have a brand by design or by default, but there's no organization or person that exists that doesn't have some type of perception from someone else, right? There's something attached to it. I'm not saying it's correct, and I'm definitely not saying it defines you, but there is a perception that you want to be mindful of, right? And so I think, there's that's kind of a narrative people sometimes talk about. Well, I don't care what people think. That's fine, right? But you have to understand that people do affect your relationships. They affect your opportunities. They affect your well-being. So you may not care what certain people think, but the people that matter, those are the people that you want to make sure you take care of. And so one thing that, when it comes to culture, I like to think about, how do we take care of ourselves in our homes, right? Whether, single, married, doesn't even matter, right? And we talk about always spend more time with the people that are going to be at your funeral and vice versa. Spend more time with those people, right? So work is work. You got hybrid models, you got fully remote models, you got in the office, you got all kind of models these days. Right. And I've learned this, that you have to learn how to give grace, because like Kevin just mentioned, some people are just dealing with stuff that you have no clue about. And so just being able to give grace and being able to have that trust and them to have psychological safety to say, hey, I'm not at my best right now, but I'm going to work on it. I'll be back. I think when we don't give people leeway or give them an opportunity to grow, we inadvertently put them in shells of themselves. And so I think it's really important to make sure, from a culture standpoint, that you're calling people up, not calling people out. And that's two completely different things. Some folks want to call you out. And I've learned that the people that try to call you out typically have a low self-perception of themselves. And those people feel better about themselves by putting other people down. So you can really tell a lot by how someone treats you and how they treat even people in the service industry. That tells me a lot about you, right? And last thing I'll say to that point, I was working at the college football playoff. We had an opening for an opportunity, well-paying opportunity, very prestigious organization. And we had two candidates that were at the finalists. One of them had maybe one major resume experience, been at the same place for multiple years. The other one had bounced around, had been to multiple positions, VP this, head of this, director of that, and resume was impeccable. I'm talking about, it was absolutely amazing. But the key was we hired the person with less experience because no one wanted to be around the other person. Fit is so important when it comes to your culture and to your environment, that you can teach people Excel or Google Docs or whatever systems you use to run your business and teams and all this kind of stuff. You can't teach people how to be a great person and how to be emotionally intelligent and how to just have a caring attitude. That's just a natural thing you pick up on. And so the way I evaluate, people when I'm working with vendors or people I'm just kind of working with my own business, if I got stuck in an airport and my flight was delayed, would I want to be around you? Or would I go to the next terminal, right? That's kind of how I evaluate relationships and things of that sort. So I think it's some people that when you walk in the office, you can't maybe decide who's going to be in that immediate circle because you maybe didn't hire them, right? It's just by default, that's who you're working with. But you can choose the people that are in your corner. And there's a big distinction between the people that are in your circle and the people that are in your corner. And I think we have to make sure we define that. The circle can be just all encompassing, everybody you kind of see on a daily basis. But that circle is that group that you feel psychologically safe with, to where if mama called 2 o'clock in the morning, something happened, who's your first call outside of family? And so those are the kind of people that I try to spend the most time with and really make sure I'm checking in on when I don't want anything. And that tells you a lot about a person when they check on you, when they reach out to you, when they don't want anything. And so that was one of my major changes I've made in the last few years, is that if someone came to mind, I was going to text or call them right then just to check in with them, see how they were doing. Because, you know, that just shows a different level of care, a different level of relationship, and a deeper understanding of what makes people tick. So that's what I would say to that, man. And I just, you know, I'm really big on that, but I think culture is just such a broad term that it starts with self and how we treat other people, and managing up, managing down. You know, it's just a lot of different layers to it, and everybody's different. It's giving every people that space to be themselves, to expand, and to grow, and to make mistakes, and to say, hey, I didn't do the right thing here. I made a mistake. But them also knowing you're not going to throw them under the bus for that. That psychological safety is a real big thing now in the culture space.
I love that. You said something in the beginning about, you know, if basically you don't want people to have a perception of you based on what they think and create this image of you. And that's why it's so important, I think, for anyone that's listening, to create your own, to make sure you tell your story. Don't let someone create your story for you. So even though it might not be a Norman Rockwell story, it might have some struggle in it, but it, you know, maybe it's not a happy ending yet, but to tell it and keep writing in the next chapter and giving it all you got, and you'll end up at that great ending. But that way, no one else can ever judge you. And if you're going to judge me, you're going to judge me who I am. Shame on you, because if you're going to judge me from my past, I can't control certain things. So I love that. I think that is so important for everyone. Don't let anyone else write your story. You tell your story. And you can't go back and edit the story. It is what it is, which is the least favorite saying I have. But it is, you have to own it and move forward. And the last thing I'll share with you, it's funny, 90% of the people I hire, I take to lunch. And it's for the exact reason you said. I want to see how they treat the server. And if they're ignorant or they're rude or they pay them no attention, that's who they really are. And that's who they will be in the workplace. So if they can't treat that person with respect that they never met, show them attention, show grace, be kind to them, be courteous, then that's who they really are. And then that's who they will be in your office. So keep that in mind, man. I love that, and I do the same thing. If you can't treat a server with respect, you're not going to treat anyone in my office with respect.
Absolutely, yeah. And I love what you said about that. And one thing I love about you guys' relationship is very reminiscent of when I had with my former boss at the college football playoff. His name is Michael Kelly. He's now the athletic director at the University of South Florida. But on paper or visibly looking, we look nothing alike. I mean, he's a 6'2" guy from DC. I'm from Mississippi. He's Caucasian. I'm African American. I mean, could not be more different. But we had one conversation when he was considering me for the opportunity. Within 5 minutes, we realized we were on the same page. And so I was looking at some research the other day, like some of the biggest topics now in the speaking industry are diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's not my specialty, but I do know this, that there's two types of diversity: low visibility and high visibility. The low visibility stuff you cannot see, but that's what makes people who they are. But we focus so much on the high visibility. Oh, he doesn't look like me, or she doesn't look like me. I'm gonna stay over here. I'm not gonna approach that person. We miss out on so many relationships and people that could really make our lives better. I mean, even think back to Jack Daniels, right? Not to bring up an alcohol reference, but Uncle Nearest taught him how to distill, his craft, that drink, and he gave him so much credit for that. So I just want to see us from, if I can say anything about DE&I, I'm not a professional in that space, is that we start looking at the low visibility stuff. And that only happens, and Kevin, you mentioned this earlier, by having a conversation. So thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, if you haven't checked out our Jerry Maguire video on Facebook or LinkedIn, you should all do that. Anyone listening, you'll see how Kenny and I came to be this dynamic duo.
Hilarious. Before we let you go, we got a staple question for the podcast. It's really about the individual guest. It's about defining value. And how do you define your value, whether it's in your industry or in your personal life?
How do I define my value? I define my value by how many people I've positively impacted and reached, and the well-being of my parents. My parents have been through a lot of hardship. They've been married 42 years, and their resilience is second to none. And they gave me just a really, really just amazing lifestyle growing up, to the point where it exposed me to so much. It taught me so much, and I wouldn't be who I am without them. And so I want the people that are around me to approve of the moves I'm making, to approve of what I'm trying to do. And I want to make sure that they're proud. And I learned a lot from losing people, that have transitioned to, and passed. is that I'm not going to wait until something bad happens to step out and do what I said I was going to do. And so I really want to make sure, one, when I get done with the speech, I want to make sure that the kids feel that they can reach out to me, that I'm going to respond to them. I'm going to take time with them when I answer the phone. I define value in that space. With my parents, I make sure I call them every single day. I've not missed a day in 33 years. And I don't plan on missing any, right? As long as I can. And when it comes to people that I go to church with, making sure that I'm being present, serving, volunteering. So every person I come to, it may be different specific outcomes, but the common denominator is kindness, respect, and just showing them that I care about them and trying to make them proud. So that's what I would say that I use to help define my value.
Wow,
that's awesome. Well, I would tell anyone that in any industry, this is a guy you want to sit down with. This is a guy that gets it. He has it. I feel like spending this time with you has made me think about some things that I could be doing differently. And especially in our industry right now, people are looking, they're pointing the fingers at the market, right? Looking at this rather than looking at the leadership and what they can bring to the table. They need to sit down with a guy like Will and say, what can I be doing? What can you speak to my organization? That's what people, if anyone that's tuning in, anyone that wants to know how to get their team back on track, here's the guy to do it. Will, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, man. Best way is email will@execimage.org. So that's short for executive. will@execimage.org. And I'm on all social media channels at Will Baggett. And yeah, just look forward to connecting with anyone. It doesn't have to be about business. I just like good people. So if you're good old country cooking type of person, where I'm from, everybody waves at everybody. Everybody calls you friend. So if you're that kind of person, we can connect.
He's also a best-selling author. So make sure you pick up Will's book. Both books, actually, the Blueprint for a Successful Career and Mic Check.
I just ordered the Blueprint. I'm on that one. I'm getting that one. I want to share that with some of the younger guys. I think hopefully there's some lessons that I want to be able to teach them from that book, because, in the beginning, like I said, I was too busy trying to hit 40 home runs and steal 40 bases. I wasn't worried about, coaching up the next guy that was going to bat 220. So now those guys are batting 500. And I'm saying, shit, I should have helped them in the beginning. Why are they working for me now? But lesson learned. That's part of that was a mistake I made, and I own it. But this has been, hopefully your favorite college football team is not Georgia, because I've heard enough about that.
It's not Georgia, man. I'm a graduate of the University of Mississippi. The Fighting Lane Kiffins and Baylor University are my two alma maters, man. So they have those are my
questions about your football.
I know. I was staying away.
I know. She was talking about
fly, birds fly, whatever they say.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. My bad. You want to see this right here? Fly, eagles, fly. My bad. Okay. Yeah, like the Karate Kid. Okay. That's what you wanted to see. Go Eagles, baby.
Again, I'll tell everyone, man, if you want to have a great conversation with someone that gets it, that has it clearly, reach out to Will. This was a great conversation. Will, we thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Will.
Kenny, Kevin, God bless you guys, man. I love the energy and passion you have. Thank you for the platform.
Thank you.